$51 billion in property tax relief while pushing benefits of the Senate plan.
The Senate plan would raise the homestead exemption to $140,000, saving Texans $375. The House plan relies on property tax rate compression, and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick says that would only save Texans $87. But Patrick's willing to work with House Speaker Dustin Burrows on a compromise.
Dustin, I would say, it's fair to say, he's really focused on the businesses, and I'm really focused on the homeowners. But he's also willing to do a lot for the homeowners, and I'm willing to do a lot for the businesses. So I really think it's kind of a good marriage.
In his State of the State address, Governor Abbott called for at least $10 billion in tax cuts. At the Capitol, Chris Fox, News Radio 1200 WOAI.
The IRS is cutting 25% of its staff. Yesterday, employees in the Office of Civil Rights and Compliance were dismissed via email ahead of even more planned layoffs. The office dedicated to preventing discrimination lost roughly 130 employees. Those remaining in department were moved to the Office of Chief Counsel. The state of Texas wants to know if they can transfer migrant prisoners to the prison in El Salvador. Republican State Representative David Lowe says that would save the state hundreds of millions of dollars. News on demand at WOAI.com. Our next update. Bottom of the hour, breaking information as it happens. I'm Eric Lycom on San Antonio's news, weather, and traffic station, News Radio 1200 WOAI.
Our financial system is cracking under pressure. Your retirement is at risk. Take control now. Lear Capital is offering a free Sky High Silver Report and Precious Metals IRA Guide at BetterNestEgg.com. Don't leave your future to chance. Go to BetterNestEgg.com.
The following show is paid for by the LaHood Norton Law Group. The views and opinions expressed are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily represent those of WOAI and iHeartMedia.
Welcome. This is Sidebar. Sidebar, a frank discussion on life, the law, and liberty. Sponsored by the LaHood Norton Law Group. And now, your objection sustained. Your hosts, Karen Klaus and former Bexar County District Attorney Nico LaHood.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is Sidebar. This week, we got to experience President Trump's Liberation Day. Liberation Day. I need an explanation of that. Is it good or bad? Because all I have been feeling after that piece of news was a bunch of people crying because the stock market plunged, because they don't know what's going on. Maybe they don't understand what a tariff is and why it should feel good, even though it's kind of bad right now. Also this week in the news, Wisconsin and Florida both had elections. And I was gone for a week, taking a little time off, and when I left, there was a huge measles scare. And when I came back, I haven't really heard much about the measles scare. We're going to talk about all of these topics, but I want to introduce you, if you have never come here before, this is Sidebar. You will be hearing from the former Bexar County DA, Nico LaHood, trial lawyer, managing partner of LaHood Norton Law Group, and George Araujo, scholar, former chemist and pharmaceutical researcher and director. And I always try to direct you to sidebartv.com. That's where you can find us on the social media platform of your choice, because we do this live on social media, and then we continue to have the conversation afterwards, where I'd love to get your comments and tell the guys what you're talking about. So I don't know where we're going to start, but I guess I would start with Liberation Day. Is this something that's going to be a national holiday? Should we be happy about it? And if we should be happy, why is everybody screaming?
Well, it depends who you ask. I mean, some people are saying they were liberated from asymmetric tariffs, and we need reciprocal tariffs, and we can talk. Well, we'll dissect that. And other people are saying they're being liberated from their savings in their accounts because we had a $10 trillion loss in the market overall. Look, it's real. I mean, there's people, and here's where I'm at. I'm 100% sure that I don't know what's going to happen. That's for sure. And so I dove into this week, just listening to quote unquote experts and people on both sides, and really try to understand tariffs. I mean, I understand the theory of them from my finance degree, but I mean, I haven't been dealing with that for decades. And so I want to listen to people that claim that, what is their theory? What's going to happen? Give me some historical trends. What is the theory behind tariffs? What's going to happen now? What causes inflation? What causes a recession, depression, all these other things? And I guess in my analysis, Karen, if you're looking at it both, and there's a lot to talk about here. If we believe that we have been taken advantage of from other countries, I mean, obviously World War II, we allowed this disproportionate tariffs because we wanted to build up Europe. I mean, we had so much, they had so little, and so we allowed it. This was planned, by the way. That was like 80 years ago. We have not had a tariff surplus for the United States since 1975, 3 years after I was born. And so we have to think about that. Okay, so are we being bullied? I mean, I'm trying to think of it in my mind the way I think about it as I've learned this week. Are we being bullied by other countries with tariffs? Well, all right. Well, if your kid's being bullied and you make the decision that your kid's going to defend themselves, the kid stands up to the bully and you get in a fight. And the kid may get hit. You may get hurt.
Yeah, that's a great way.
In the process of defending yourself from a bully, there's going to be some collateral consequences. You get a black eye, you may get a busted nose, a busted lip, maybe a chipped tooth. I don't know. But the long-term effects is this guy's not going to bully you anymore, this girl. That's kind of the way my mind works. Now, at what cost? Do you stop the bully with a gun and then you end up in prison for the rest of your life? Do you stop the bully with a bomb? I mean, you understand my point? So can there be an overreaction? There are people that I respect on both sides of this argument. One would be my financial guy who thinks that Trump overplayed his hand. He said, look, if we have another wipeout, he called it, or a dump on Monday, we could see numbers like in 87. I mean, in this, now he says there's usually a pretty quick
turnaround. Yeah, right.
And then there's a long-term benefit. So, I mean, he understands, because this my buddy, Mark, I mean, he studies this stuff. I mean, this is all, Mark, George. And he's very knowledgeable in this. And he says, but then on the flip side, then you have this wealth effect. When you see your accounts going down, even though it doesn't affect your income, your income now, you have this, what they call a wealth effect, where people feel less affluent, so they stop spending money. Then you look at the jobs report from March. And the jobs report, they expected 100 and something thousand jobs. They got 228,000 jobs. I mean, so there's a lot to dissect here. And again, I'm just kind of putting it all out there, and then we can start peeling through it the way you want to. And then you look at Trump's overall plan. Remember, on Trump's overall plan, he's not just planning on tariffs. I mean, he wants tax cuts. He wants spending cuts. He wants deregulation. He wants more energy. And yes, he wants tariffs. And in all fairness, again, I'm trying to be objective about this. Obviously, I support Trump, but I mean, it doesn't mean that he's perfect. He's been talking about this for decades.
I know. That's
Literally.
Exactly what I was going to say.
He took an ad out in the paper in the 80s about tariffs. I mean, he's been, this is one thing, he campaigned on this. Now, some people say, yes, he campaigned on this, but the way he's implementing it is not smart. Because what are you going to do? How are you going to make up this money? Now you're going to force China and Europe to say, screw you. And China's already doing that, right? 34% tariffs. But last point, and then let's go to George, and then we'll just start. You direct us, Karen. But if tariffs theoretically, and this is in my mind, if tariffs don't work and they hurt a country, why does China use them? Why do all these other India use them?
The entire world.
Why? You talk about these asymmetrical, but no, but China uses them, and they're not struggling. I mean, India. I mean, so again, do you call a little BS on this? Is it just the disruption of something new? Is it Wall Street versus the industry? I mean, there's just a lot to analyze here. Again, I have a lot more to say, but I just kind of wanted to lay it out and see where you and George want to go with this.
Yeah, you did say a lot, and I mean, I just can't disagree with much of it at all. I was thinking about what you said about Mark, and I happen to trust Mark. So some of my criticisms for the certified financial planner class, I'm going to separate him from those criticisms because I happen to trust him. And Mark is a student. He does study this stuff, and so he is data-driven, and he's pretty analytical. My concern is that a lot of the so-called certified financial planner class it is not like that. I'm old enough to remember literally 10 seconds before Trump announced Liberation Day, when certified financial planners and the so-called economic experts on television used to warn people not to be de facto day traders. Do you remember that? Are you old enough to remember that?
Yeah, I was awake a week ago.
I used to remember that. Yeah. They used to say, don't look at daily events in the market, Or
don't be in the market if you can't take that. I know.
That's certified financial planning 1. And then I do remember them telling people to diversify their assets. Remember diversification when it was a thing? And the reality is that most people, I don't know anybody who has 100% of their investments. And this is how the media spends it. I want to go to how the media is framing the concern, which I think is hogwash. But no one has their assets, at least I think it would be irresponsible, 100% of their assets in stocks or the equitable markets. They're diversified. And so this idea of the $10 trillion loss, I really think that at the end of the day, the jobs report is frankly the thing we ought to be looking at. And in the stock market stuff, I think really ought to be sort of a secondary side dish to the concern.
But that's exactly the opposite of what happened.
And the exact opposite is happening. And the reason is, and Nico will remember this, the stock markets, the equitable markets, they are leading indicators, which means that in being leading indicators, they reflect the opinion of what the future is likely to do. Whereas a jobs market is actually tangible. Those are following indicators. Investors, companies are this is actual data they can act on because this is stuff that's going on right now. And so if you're going to pick one, pick reality. Don't pick sentiment about what may happen. And so I think that when you see estimates almost being doubled in terms of job reports and the production of that kind of value, I think you ought to be focusing on that and be careful not to go hysterical
but it's real,
value
though.
on paper.
When people look at their accounts, I mean, it's real. I mean, that's a real effect. That wealth effect is real. And people are worried. They think, I can't retire now. And they're not playing it out. I mean, a good financial advisor, depending on the age bracket you're in. I mean, if you lose your money in your 70s, it's different than losing it in your 40s or 50s, or having this up and down yo-yo effect. I mean, your accounts are going to do that,
right? But I want to just I want to lovingly
real.
push back on the notion of reality, because I got out of the stock market entirely because I felt it wasn't real.
Right.
That was my greatest. So don't talk to me. Don't talk to me about getting involved in equity. I have an MBA, so I know something about this, and I studied it, and I got out of it because I don't like these are basically paper investments.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to sell everything today. And I would argue this is a great time to, and yet
which is nuts.
And yet this is a great time to buy.
Yes.
And yet it's a great time to buy. My dad always says every crisis is an opportunity. And a lot of crises are perceived crises. And so, and you know that, Nico, that this only matters if you're actually going to sell this stuff. And most people aren't going to sell this stuff for a long time. And so this is loaded with opportunity. So I guess my advice is I just caution against hysteria.
Oh, that for sure. We should pause.
Really caution. This is really sort of a paper tiger. And I realize what you're saying, that if everybody was going to sell today, it would matter. If everybody was going to buy today, it matters. But the reality is that the lion's share of people are not going to do that. They're not. And when I see CNN and MSNBC spinning this into a reality that actually isn't, I get very, very concerned about that. And then there's just why Trump is even doing this. I mean, why is he doing this? There's a problem that he's trying to solve, and you brought it up.
Yeah.
And that is the reality that we have offshored American manufacturing capability over the last 30 years. And you drive around and you realize, I mean, you can drive through ghost town after ghost town where you see hollowed out manufacturing facilities. And the United States is actually making nothing right now. We are very, very vulnerable. This cannot be sustained.
I think we really need to explain that, because that, to me, is the only reason that people are afraid, because they don't get why it's being done. So when we come back, somebody's going to attempt to explain it, right? This is Sidebar. Don't forget to go online. Get online now, because we'll continue the show after the show. We'll be right back now.
With reputations as respected high-level prosecutors in Bexar County, the attorneys of LaHood Norton Law Group bring invaluable practical knowledge from the other side of the aisle, using over 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome.
I'm Nico LaHood with LaHood Norton Law Group. Have you been arrested or accused of a crime? The LaHood Norton Law Group has the knowledge to defend you regardless of how small or large your case. In Bexar County, anywhere in the state, or even nationwide, we have the knowledge to defend you in federal or state court, no matter how small or large your case. We are trial lawyers with proven success.
Using their 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate for their clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome. The LaHood Norton Law Group. For a free consultation, call today, 210-797-7700. 210-797-7700. LaHoodNorton.com.
This is Nico LaHood. If you or a loved one has been arrested or accused of a crime, we can help.
LaHoodNorton.com.
1200 WOAI. This is Sidebar. Go to sidebartv.com. And I have to comment, and I'll do this every single week. Go to sidebartv.com to find a social media platform, but also because you can become a contributor. We would really appreciate that. It's at the bottom of the first page. I've done it myself, sidebartv.com. Okay, so I hear y'all talking during the break, and it's common sense. It's stuff that we've heard Trump say a zillion times. It makes sense, yet people are still freaking out about all their money being gone. So why are people still listening to the news that says...
Because they're looking at their accounts, so they're seeing something tangible.
I know, but
right?
everybody's been through that, but everybody that's in the stock market knows that you can't look at it every single minute.
Right.
Or you will go nuts.
Look, I mean, so big picture. The theory behind a lot of people criticize tariffs in general is because it's truly a tax, right, on the American people. So if you charge money, if we have to charge, then the products get more expensive. Then the manufacturer theoretically passes on to the consumer. They don't have to, by the way. I mean, they can absorb some of that, so it doesn't have to pass on to the consumer. But theoretically, it's supposed to, and so that's fine. I get the criticism of tariffs overall as a play, and there's some people that it can be used strategically in support to overcorrect asymmetric tariffs and bring back manufacturing. We'll talk about that here in a second. But here's a bigger point, and I think it's gone around this week, so I'm glad it's out there. If the idea of tariffs for Trump, because look, everyone agrees we have a problem, and it's a big problem.
Yes.
And it could be a national security problem. I mean, if we're outsourcing everything, number one, we've lost manufacturing. I mean, from the car manufacturers to steel. I mean, a lot of the middle class have been gutted out because we've lost our jobs, those jobs, to outsourcing it because it's quote unquote cheaper. Number one, they're paying slave labor over there.
Got it.
And number two, of the asymmetric tariffs. So that's one thing. I get all that. But big picture, again, if tariffs were such a bad idea, then why are these videos going around of Pelosi in 96, of Sanders, Bernie Sanders 10, 15 years ago, Obama when he was president, Schumer, of all these people talking about asymmetric tariffs, reciprocal tariffs? I mean, if I was Trump, I'd say, look, it's not even my idea, even though he's been talking about it for decades. But everybody seemed to have been talking about it back then. So when Trump was on Donahue and Oprah, Schumer and Pelosi and Obama and Sanders were advocating it as well. So this was something that it seemed like maybe more Democrats focused on. It wasn't the Republicans, because Trump was a Democrat back then, my understanding. So this is something that the Democrats were championing, just like they used to champion free speech, by the way. I mean, so things have switched. So my question is, and everyone that is criticizing has said, and I've lovingly asked, because there's people that I love dearly and that I respect a lot, that we've been having passionate discussions about this, is give me the concept. Forget about now. Take Orange Man out of it. Let's just, why are tariffs a bad idea? Now, is it the implementation? Are you saying it was just you peeled the Band-Aid off? You knocked off the scab? Or are just tariffs a bad idea in general, number one? Number two, how do we fix this problem that everybody agrees we have? Because all it takes is for China to just cut off the nozzle, and we're screwed. If we're not producing stuff at home, and they are controlling trade, and look, if people don't think China is an existential threat, they're crazy. They're absolutely nuts, because China is a threat. This is really about China. China is a threat, and we're not equipped for a confrontation with China. Whether people want to believe it or not, we're not. They have the biggest army and the biggest navy, and they're still growing. That is a fact. They are militarizing in what they call the South China Sea. They're making territorial claims, and you've seen them do that. They're engaging in espionage to a scale we've never seen before. And you just talk to the FBI experts; they're talking about this, but it doesn't get the attention. They're building nuclear silos all over the place. They're building military bases around the world. We've talked about it on the show about the Panama Canal and how they're controlling the Panama Canal. They're involved in technological theft. They're stealing ideas from us. They're funding the war in the Middle East and in Europe. They're selling fentanyl. And let us not forget COVID. China wants to be the superpower. They want to be the world leaders. They do. They've said it. It's not even like they're telling us, hey, let's not talk about this. And they're doing it. So look, there's a lot here to dissect, and we can do 2 shows on this, George. And you always bust my chops because I throw out a bunch. in a short period of time.
I was just going to say that. Tariffs
I
now
want to make sure we cover all of it.
Brother, you're preaching to
Right.
the choir. I've been wanting to talk about China forever, and I agree with you. I think that is absolutely critical. That said, China desperately needs the United States far more than the United States needs China, and here's why. And I think this is right. They retaliated with 34%. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Your people desperately need the United States. We sustain China. We made China, actually. And I don't say that proudly, but we made China. Since Nixon visited in 72, we have made the fatalistic mistake that somehow we were going to democratize China. We were going to get him to see how lovely democracy is, when in fact, that the exact opposite has happened. So Nico's right. This is truly an existential threat. All the more while these tariffs are absolutely essential right now. And while he called them reciprocal, he then followed up and said, hey, these are kind reciprocal.
You need to explain that more, because
reciprocity.
I'm going to say this just 1 second, George, because this is a perfect time to read what Alamo Talk has just written, because you can explain why what you're saying makes so much sense. He said there's nothing wrong with tariffs, but there is a problem with taxing the whole world 200% and crashing the market.
Okay.
When you talk about reciprocal, there is no reciprocal.
Donald Trump, generally speaking, hates tariffs. If you go back to Trump 1.0 in 2018.
Hates tariffs?
Yes, let me explain.
Didn't he say it's the most beautiful word in the world?
In context.
Beautiful.
Okay.
In context. Generally speaking, he hates them. You go back to 2018, he met with the European leader, I think it was John Paul Juncker at the time, and they were talking about this very topic. And he said, look, the goal here, Trump said, the goal here isn't tariffs. This isn't ideal.
Right.
The goal is
free trade.
Zero tariffs.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what he wants. That's what we all want. The problem is it's not. Look, in 2024, and this is a crazy number, but in 2020, relative to what the world has been charging the United States, in 2024, the average number of tariffs imposed by the United States on other nations was around 2.5%. That's pretty close to zero. When you look at the amount of tariffs that other nations, and Trump showed that board, and he's absolutely spot on. The calculation for that, if you were going to be precise, is very, very complicated. Most people don't realize that there's literally a different tariff for every product line. So it would take forever if you were going to do an actual precise calculation. You'd have to go through thousands of products, hundreds of products per nation. You'd be there all day. So what they did is they came up with a calculation which they published. And they simply said, look, you take the trade imbalance. Let's use China as an example since you just brought it up. Our trade imbalance in 2024 with China, the trade deficit with China is around $295 billion. You divide that by the total number of exports from China to the United States. Hold on to something. $439 billion in exports. You divide one over the other, and you get around 67.1%. Trump took that number and divided it by half. This is not a reciprocal tariff. This is a reciprocal divided by half. Now, this is a warning shot. I love it. I think this is, watch what happens over the ensuing weeks, people. Watch what happens.
Well, he's confident.
Look at what happens.
him and his staff are confident.
He should be confident.
The cabinet members
I don't think this is hard. And the certified financial planner class and the economic pundits can respectfully shove it. Because this is not hard. Nico, this is basic math.
But isn't it easy
And
to
here's
figure
why.
out that the only people that can ruin it are the American people that say we don't want this?
It's the hyperventilation
Right,
hysteria.
right.
As Nico always says, well, you're quoting Roosevelt. There's nothing to fear but fear itself. I think what's happening here is Trump is sending an important warning shot. He's clearly making this thing just on mathematics alone. You guys need us way more by the math than we need you. We have lots of options. He looked at 180 countries and he said, look, 10% for everyone. 10%.
You got to explain why, because there's a theory behind that. Because you get the criticisms and the Rachel Maddows and all those mamalukes out there that are saying, like, thanks for getting, and they mentioned this little country in wherever in the middle of whatever sea. You sure showed them, Trump. So explain
And
why
what is happening.
Explain that though, because China and other countries can use other countries to bring goods in and avoid tariffs, right? Is that part of it?
Well, many countries don't have as hostile a number as a China, for instance, or the European Union, or Canada, or Mexico. And so he picked a baseline. And that baseline is really a warning shot, because at any given time, those countries can stop those tariffs. How do they stop those tariffs? They get rid of their own.
Yeah, of course.
Israel got rid of their own instantly. So This happened overnight.
And by the way, he was tariffing. He had a tariff on Israel too. So all the people that say, "Oh,
100%.
Israel runs everything," I mean, he was going to tariff them too. Tell me if this analogy makes any sense to you. So somebody punches you in the face. What are you going to do? You're going to cry, fall down. You're going to punch him back. I mean, I don't know.
All of the above.
He chose C. I would choose C. I chose D, and D would be punch him 10 times till they're one punch, and that's how I train my children. But I mean, so I mean, this is a response.
Yes. So this is a 2-tier deal. This is really a warning shot. You guys are charging us 67% in aggregate tariffs. We're going to charge you that divided by 2. And what's that saying? Get the picture how serious we are? If you're going to call our bluff, we still, in the case of China, we still have another 34% to go. Do you think you can handle that? Hell no. They've had nearly 0 forever. Imagine the devastating impact.
That is true.
Imagine the devastating impact of going to hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs. You don't think that's going to get their attention? So let's go back to what Nico said as the general concern here, that everybody's going to pay more. So let's think about it. I don't agree that it's a tax, just by definition.
But theoretically, I'm not saying on every product. It depends on the product.
I was going to keep it even more simple than that. I was going to follow the LaHood axiom, keep things simple. Look, a tax, I don't have a choice to pay a tax. You got a choice here. You really do. So let's look at it. They impose a tariff. You have higher prices, lower demand. That's how this works. So higher prices, lower demand. So when consumers have to pay more for the things that they like to buy, they inevitably then buy less of those things. Okay. But when they buy less, the companies that produce those things also make less money, which means that the companies are met with the same economic impact that is inflicted on their customers. So the companies have a choice to make. And we're seeing it already. And Nico mentioned it last week, and we need to talk more as the weeks ensue. You're going to see the reshoring. And this is what happened in Trump 1.0. There's study after study after study. You see the reshoring of the manufacturing base back into America. Trump is simply saying, look, you don't like these tariffs, get rid of your own. Seems to me fair. I'll get rid of mine if you get rid of yours. Great. And that's already happening. These smaller countries, that's one of the first things they're doing right now is they're dropping their tariffs altogether. Now think about just in those savings. People, please stop and think about that. If you've been charged 67%, 50%, 40% for decades, those go away. Just in that movement, think about economically what kind of a windfall that means to the American consumer. And then there's the side benefit, which is my favorite. Now companies are de-incentivized. Remember, they went overseas because it was cheaper over there.
Right.
A significant portion of the Chinese market is children.
Yeah.
I thought we as Americans had a problem with that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Don't we care about that? Right? So the other thing is that they have horrible regulations on American companies, and they're stealing American intellectual property as a condition for even doing business.
They make you turn over your intellectual property.
Yeah.
Do they make you turn over your
Exactly
IP
right.
when you want to go do? So you want to save money? You're gonna pay me something, a quid pro quo, and then they never get it back, and then China benefits from it.
And so allow me to just finish
smart.
this before I punt to you, Karen and Nico.
Break.
Companies are now saying, explain to me again why it's a good idea to go offshore.
Yeah,
What exactly is the point? I think I'll be here because now the world's richest market to the tune of $29 trillion annually every year. That's how much the American consumer in aggregate does business on, total GDP. I'm going to build here. I no longer have a tariff. I no longer have a distribution charge. And I've got the world's richest market in my backyard. Explain to me again why I'm going to build in China. You think China can afford to play these games?
Okay, but now we need to explain to the entire world why it makes sense and why we just need to hold on for just a second. And I want to ask you about the time frame on how long we need to hold on, because I think a lot of people are asking that incredibly hard question. Okay, we're going to be taking a break right now. Stick with us. We'll be right back with more on Sidebar.
San Antonio's news, weather, traffic, plus breaking news 24/7. This is News Radio 1200 WOAI from the GiveMeTheVin.com Sell Us Your Cars studio.
Good morning, I'm Eric Lycum on News Radio 1200 WOAI. After an all-night vote-a-rama, the Senate passes a budget bill. Details coming up. First, traffic and weather together.
From the WOAI Traffic Center.
35 northbound, the off-ramp to Pat Booker is closed due to some road work. Loop 1604 westbound, off-ramp to Kalispell Parkway is also closed for construction. I'm Alexis, News Radio 1200 WOAI.
On our way to 68 this afternoon, cloudy, breezy, 61 now. At the WOAI 24-hour weather center, our top story. The Senate worked into the early morning hours on a budget bill that would advance President Trump's agenda.
The Senate passing a budget blueprint overnight for President Trump's tax breaks and spending cuts. Senate Republicans plugged away to approve the measure despite strong Democratic opposition against what President Trump calls the big, beautiful bill. The 51-248 vote fell along mostly party lines. The framework now goes to the House.
Fox's Chanley Painter reporting the House could vote on the bill as early as next week. Fencing going up around the White House ahead of today's anti-Trump protests in Washington, D.C. About 10,000 people expected for a rally at the Washington Monument that begins in about an hour and a half. Protest is part of a nationwide day of action against the Trump administration organized by a group called Hands Off 2025. A bull rider from Wyoming has died after he was hurt in a competition in southeast Texas. 24-year-old Dylan Grant was riding a bull in the Wharton County Youth Fair Extreme Bulls competition when he was bucked off and injured. Grant was taken by ambulance to a nearby hospital, then flown to a Houston hospital where he was pronounced dead. Grant was from Laramie, Wyoming. News on demand at WOAI.com. Our next update, top of the hour, breaking information as it happens. I'm Eric Lycum on San Antonio's news, weather, and traffic station, News Radio 1200, WOAI.
This report is sponsored by Lear Capital.
Our financial system is cracking under pressure. Your retirement is at risk. Take control now. Lear Capital is offering a free Sky High Silver Report and Precious Metals IRA guide at BetterNestEgg.com. Don't leave your future to chance. Go to BetterNestEgg.com.
1200 WOAI. Sadly, we have not finished this topic because what you hear in mainstream media is, oh, well, if you have confidence in this, which why shouldn't you after you both have explained what it really means, then everything should even out in X amount of time. Like, why is that even something that we need to be considering what will happen if everybody follows, if all countries follow along?
Well, the answer, Karen. First time
he did this before.
Well, that's part of that's kind of the retort back. I mean, he did this before. Matter of fact, they were so effective that Biden kept some of the tariffs in place when he took over. He didn't take those off. So look, I get it. Theoretically, yes, we understand what tariffs do in the books, but in reality, it's maybe something different. And yes, George and I were talking about this. If every country told Trump to go F himself, then yeah, we'd be in a pickle, but they would be waging war on themselves because they would go bankrupt.
Economic suicide.
It'd be nuts. I mean, so they're playing Russian roulette with themselves, and then it becomes a poker game. Who's going to flinch? I'm all in. You going to call or you going to fold? I mean, so Trump is playing poker. He's confident. His Treasury Secretary is confident, and there's a lot of people, experts too. You can find experts on both sides of this argument, and they both sound great, and they both sound. And I guess for me, as someone in the stands, just listening and saying that makes sense, this makes sense. Number one, I still don't have the answer to those two questions. Why did Pelosi and Sanders and Obama support reciprocal tariffs in the 90s and early 2000s? I want to know why. You got to give me that answer. I mean, that's a legitimate question. Alamo Talk, whoever else, Mark Antoine, whoever's supporting this, my friends that are critical. And number two, if we agree there's a problem with this asymmetric tariff and the threat it shows, I mean, we've lost manufacturing, we're losing more. So how do you stop that? How do you stop saving American jobs and American manufacturing in certain industries? And then how do you protect against the truly threat, the national threat of if another country gets too strong and just look what happened with COVID. We weren't producing products here, whether it was legit or not, whatever, that's a different discussion. But when we needed something, we didn't have it here.
We'll say that again.
And we were held hostage.
People really need to park on what you just said. They just park there because we learned this in COVID. We needed personal protective equipment,
right,
and we didn't have it.
Well, we thought we did, but yes.
What is this? Well, what is a significant supplier of personal protective equipment in the United States?
What?
What is the most significant supplier?
China.
Correct.
Sorry.
You think that's convenient? Of course not.
Of course not.
Antibiotics.
China.
So think about the twofer. So China creates the problem with COVID, and then they charge you for the problem. And then all the tree huggers out there. Now we have a bunch of masks and people dying and all the environment's getting all jacked up because you have 2 million or whatever million masks that weren't thrown away properly. I mean, so it's just like it's like a threefer. It's like a domino effect of problems. But it's because we're weaker when we have to rely on someone else. If you have to rely on them, I mean, it's like a biblical principle. What is it? The borrower is enslaved to the lender. It's in Proverbs. It's true. So if you have to borrow money all the time and you're not financially independent, well, then you're always enslaved to someone that's lending you money. So take that principle and to China or other countries, India, wherever we're getting our stuff from. If we over-rely on things that are critical to us, then they can just turn off the faucet and we're screwed if they want to go to war with us, right?
And then superimpose over that a censorship complex that says you can't complain just like Nico did. You can't explain the problem just like Nico did. And so you have imbecilic commies that used to be the Democrat Party during the COVID era, plus Republicans that aided and abetted their stupidity, where we couldn't say anything about this, otherwise we'd be racist. Remember that? I'm old enough to remember it. Go back to Trump 1.0. If you're wondering where this plays out, go back to Trump 1.0 and objectively study it. In 2023, the United States International Trade Commission released a report that found that Trump's Section 232 and 301, part of that trade commission, that deals with tariffs, and in their words, affected about $300 billion in imports. And their conclusion was that his tariffs did exactly what he said they would do. What is that? Well, they brought manufacturing back home and they put American workers first. That's in 2023. In 2024, there was a pretty robust report released by the Coalition for a Prosperous America. And that confirmed what Trump had been saying since the 1980s. Like you just said, Nico. His first-term tariffs actually strengthened the U.S. economy.
Right.
That's the result of that report. And to use their words, it led to significant reshoring of the American manufacturing base and American jobs. That's Trump 1.0. And I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, the Economic Policy Institute said that the tariffs that were imposed under Trump 1.0 show absolutely zero correlation to inflation.
Right.
Which is exactly another charge that we're hearing right now. So by any objective measure, this fear-mongering is BS.
Well, and you know, you get a lot of retort when you said you don't defend your position with a whataboutism. Well, what about this? And I agree. That's not my first line of defense, but it is. I think it is important to bring up whataboutisms when you're analyzing your logic or lack thereof.
You mean when you bring up Pelosi? So she acknowledged that there was a problem.
Right.
And the problem was what you just said.
And the solution is reciprocal tariffs.
I mean, nobody had the political will to do it.
Right.
That's the difference.
That's the difference.
We finally have a guy that has it, and now we crucify him. Brilliant. Be very, very careful. We voted for this. Give the man an opportunity. And he's Trump 47, but look at Trump 45. And look at what he did.
What I'm saying is when you had inflation problems, you had Biden and the Democrats and the left saying this is transitional. It's temporary. Transitory, right? Transitory inflation. Temporary inflation. This is going to hurt. I mean, just go back and watch. So all I'm saying is I'm not saying that's a one-for-one what about it. I'm just saying, why was it okay for you to make that point then, but somebody supporting Trump's agenda right now? And again, it's only one phase in his 5-part agenda, from tax cuts to energy, all this other stuff, deregulation. I mean, there's a multiple prong of approach here. This is one of them. He's going aggressive because he feels like we need to. Now, legit, in the end, look, we'll know in 6 months. We'll know soon enough. I mean, and if there needs to be a Maricopa, so be it. And then the Republicans will get bamboozled in the midterms if this doesn't work out.
Nico, in numbers, Trump's trying to solve an annual $1.2 trillion deficit.
I know.
That's breathtaking. 1.2 trillion every single year.
Well, we've gotten used to hearing that. We've gotten used to hearing trillions. Before, when you said billions, you freaked out. And now you hear billions, like, well, what's 50 billion? 50 billion? Are you insane? I mean, the richest people in the world don't have, past a certain point of billions.
Right.
I mean, but we talk about it, and so we say trillion. So think about it. The 1.2, you said trillion deficit is a problem, not only for our manufacturing and for our economy, ultimately, but also for our national security.
Yes.
There's multi ways to look at this, and again, I'm still waiting for the answer why the Democrats supported this before, and somehow it's different this time. I guess give me some data, and then number two, I mean, what's the answer? How do you solve this 1.2 trillion deficit problem that is a real problem? And I haven't heard anybody say it's not.
Amen.
But don't you think that it's a problem? Because this is the actual first issue that Trump has taken on that has affected people, whether they're Republican, Democrat, because it touched their money. You know, when he said, I'm getting rid of, I'm closing the border and sending all the criminals out. Everybody was like, yes, that's what we voted for. I am doing this. Yes, that's what. And all of a sudden, when their 401k goes to nothing for one day, they're like, I hate this guy. My money's gone. He's going to say, it's like it's the chink in the armor.
People are emotional. And look, it's real. I mean, Karen, it's easy for someone to criticize. And George said it earlier, and he's out of the market. I mean, he's investing in property and real estate and property and development. That's what he does for a career, so that's fine. So his retirement plan is in his properties. And I get that. And I have a very responsible Mark McGarian, love the dude. He's a brother in Christ, and he's a very well-studied man, and he's done wonderful for me and my family, even in hard times, because he's not a traditional investor. But it's real for people. It's very real for people, and so we can't discount it. I mean, it's real, because in the end, we can say, "Oh, come on, you're overreacting," and then you lose another election, and then you're overreacting, and then the progressives get back in charge because they promised something else, and people are very pain-driven, and they're feeling pain, and it's immediate pain.
And I see that. But isn't it
real.
Also true that what was ignored was the jobs report? And the budget that is this much closer to being put into place? Zero information about that.
The jobs report's important. I mean, like George said, it's a now. It's a snapshot of the now. They exceeded it, 228,000 new jobs, and they anticipated 150 or 100 and something,
140,000.
140. Okay.
Yeah.
So you crushed it. I mean, they crushed the jobs report because people are encouraged. They see the $6 trillion of investment, $5 trillion. I don't want to overdo it. Whatever it is, it's up there in the T's. Of companies that are coming to invest in the United States. And
they're not all government jobs.
Well, no, these are manufacturing. Right. This is development. These are people that are going to invest. And if you invest in this country, you're going to invest in jobs. That's going to help people long term. Again, so I use the bully analogy. I mean, your kid's going to go through some tough stuff. He's going to stop a bully. And I think it's inarguable that we have been bullied by certain countries for no reason. We shouldn't have been. We've allowed ourselves to. It started after World War II because Europe was decimated. Get it, check, or whatever else. But then it just turned into a new normal, and then it's turned on us. Now I would, okay, well, I guess this is just the way it always is. Well, no, that's a stupid way of thinking. And Trump has said, I'm going to change that. So he's changing it. All I tell people is, look, in the end, I'm not going to change your mind. You're probably not going to, you're not going to change mine. My mind is, look, I'm listening to the experts. I don't claim to be the expert. Certain things make sense. Others don't make sense. Like, why did the Democrats support it? And what's your answer to this? Okay, still waiting for those answers. Okay, so but let's just wait. If it blows up in his face, then you know what? Then we're gonna go to hell in a handbasket. The progressives will take over, and there you go. We're back to where we were back when Biden was in office. But we gotta wait.
Get ready for this to be hyper politicized because Democrats don't have anything else. If you want to get a picture of where this is going in terms, and I think it's a mistake for them, but let them continue. Go to an interview between Chris Jansing on MSNBC and a former Romney, I should say, campaign consultant, Stuart Stevens, and listen. And I found the quote here because I didn't want to get it wrong. It is absolutely crazy in terms of what they think they should do in response to these tariffs.
Oh my gosh. Can you hold on to that? Because
it won't surprise you, but it's crazy.
And I also want to ask you, as we go to the break here, did that Wisconsin and Florida election show us anything? Is that like an indicator of what's to come? We're going to take a break right now. Remember, sidebartv.com, get online also, and we will be right back.
With reputations as respected high-level prosecutors in Bexar County, the attorneys of LaHood Norton Law Group bring invaluable practical knowledge from the other side of the aisle, using over 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome.
I'm Nico LaHood with LaHood Norton Law Group. Have you been arrested or accused of a crime? The LaHood Norton Law Group has the knowledge to defend you regardless of how small or large your case. In Bexar County, anywhere in the state, or even nationwide, we have the knowledge to defend you in federal or state state court, no matter how small or large your case. We are trial lawyers with proven success.
Using their 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate for their clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome. The LaHood Norton Law Group. For a free consultation, call today. 210-797-7700. 210-797-7700. LaHoodNorton.com.
This is Nico LaHood. If you or a loved one has been arrested or accused of a crime, we can help.
LaHoodNorton.com.
You want to read it?
This is Sidebar, and we have to get you on a social media platform right now because we are going to continue after the show. If you could wrap up what you were talking about, George, so we can head on to another topic, that would be so great.
Stuart Stevens is a former Romney campaign consultant, and he was on MSNBC in an interview with Chris Jansing, both of them relatively unhinged. And so the presentation of the problem was pretty bad. And you're dealing with truly financially illiterate people. And so, again, this is all fomenting hysteria and fear. And this is what Stuart Stevens said after hearing complete nonsense from Chris Jansing concerning tariffs and really how 401ks work. But setting that aside because we don't have time in this show. But here's what Stevens responded to and said this. You know, this is a corrupt administration that is breaking the law. So stop right there. Breaking what law?
Yeah.
Because tariff negotiations, tariff impositions, that falls flatly inside Article 2's powers. So I'd like to know what law is being broken here. But okay, that's check. And then he said, and that's how we should start talking about it. Boy, that's new. Never heard that before. And he continues, Elon Musk, for instance, it's been said over and over again, is probably engaged in criminal activities.
Oh, my gosh.
That makes him a criminal. Think about that. Elon Musk is probably involved in criminal activities, and therefore that makes him a criminal. What a standard.
Dangerous.
And he continues, that makes him someone who should be held accountable under law. And that's the framework this needs to be put in, because this is not a normal moment.
And nobody corrected him?
Have you ever heard of a Democrat politicizing criminal differences? Of course, this is all
Turning
they do.
it all around.
And this is where it is very likely to go. Foment hysteria and fear so that you can sort of prop up, your legal campaign, which is really illegal if you think about it. But this is all they have, and I think you can expect to see more of it.
Well, it's funny because Annette online said the Wisconsin voted for voter ID by 67%, but the same ballot elect a lefty South Carolina justice. It smells fishy. And what's also kind of fishy is I leave a week ago and the number one story was measles. And I come back and there's not one word about it. And I was wondering, did I miss something? What is going on? What is the latest with the cases and why did they keep reporting them and what's going on now?
Put a bow on the Wisconsin thing.
Yeah,
I think that sounds,
because that is a little
contradictory. But I don't think those are contradictory
things.
Look,
they're called special elections for a reason. They're special. I mean, I don't know anyone that puts a lot of weight on special elections. You have Republicans that are happy about Trump winning. They rest on their laurels. They let their guard down. You have Democrats, usually the opposite, are pumped up and they're fired up. And that's why you do stories like what George was talking about to pump people up, whether it's legitimate or conjured. It doesn't matter. People react on emotions, as we just finished talking about. That's what they vote. I mean, I don't think it was anything.
Yeah, and Wisconsin, Nico, is just to follow up on Nico and to address the questioner. Wisconsin, I'm not surprised by this, and I know we pumped a bunch of money into it. That's fine. It was a loss by about 10 points, a loss indeed. I realize it's concerning because that seat, the Wisconsin Supreme Court decisions can influence redistricting. That is concerning. We don't want to end up with any more Democrats in Congress. I got it. But this shouldn't be a surprise. This was a Democrat that held that seat. Another Democrat holds it. Wisconsin, Trump barely won it by 1%. Wisconsin, it's kind to say that Wisconsin is purple. I think they're clearly in the blue column. In my view, Trump, as I said, barely won by 1%. Now, that's true. You've got left-wing people that voted a left-wing person in a judicial race. Now, step back and say, what's going on with the voter ID? I think this is a huge win, Nico, and I think it has national implications because this is a win for common sense. Because even though they tend to be left-wing oriented, they want free and fair elections. I love that. I mean, I think this is hopeful. I don't think there's a contradiction. I think people can have some cognitive dissonance.
Well, two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah, I think there is. I don't think they're connecting the fact that the individuals that just voted in the United States Supreme Court would not favor voter ID. That's a problem. But good for the voters for coming out and saying, we think that this is a good idea and Republicans should embrace it.
Yeah.
We are the party of common sense and law and order. And we believe that people who vote should prove that they are who they are. That was a huge win.
We just wanted to keep on winning. We wanted to keep winning, and we didn't win that one.
What do you have to say about it? Do you want to put a bow in Florida, or do you want to move on?
No, not really. I mean, if you expected to win in Florida, Florida didn't win by the percentage that they should have won by. I think it's just fatigue and not just people letting their guard down, but they still won. But they didn't win by the numbers that they normally win by. Florida's red. It's just the bottom line.
It was a significant win, just as not a significant win had Trump been on ballot.
Yeah, I mean, it just didn't, not by the numbers that we normally win in Florida by, but it is what it is. I mean, that was expected and it's good. That would have been troubling.
Move on.
So about the measles.
Speaking of fear-mongering, please.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, the reason why you missed all the fear-mongering is what you missed when you were gone, Karen. I mean, look, you have to think about the history of measles, and you have to look at data, and you have to look at science. And the problem is you're not going to get any fair reporting on measles if you Google it or if you YouTube it or whatever. You're just not. I tried it. You have to go to, like, George goes to journals, but that's his mind. He's the chemist scholar dude. I think you got to go somewhere like Highwire. That's a place you can look it up. Del Bigtree runs it in his organization, and they're, investigative journalists. I think in 8 years of them doing it, if I'm wrong, someone correct me. I think only once or twice did he have to go and make a correction on their reporting. They're very diligent about their reporting. They do a lot of science-based reporting. They do a lot of due diligence. And look, whether you agree with them or not, it's a good source. Don't just listen to one side. Listen to both. So last year from what I understand, we had 16 measles outbreaks last year. What's an outbreak? 3 or more cases is an outbreak. Well, that's a low standard. Yeah. 3 or more outbreaks. Crap. I mean, okay, whatever. And so we've had 4 this year. I mean, what's the fear mongering? Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, me growing up, no one was afraid of the measles. No one was afraid of mumps. Yeah. No one was afraid of chickenpox. You just weren't. My older brother got the chickenpox, and my parents made me sleep in his single. We had 2 single beds. They made me sleep next to him when he had the chickenpox. So I get the chickenpox, and guess what? I got the chickenpox. I stayed home. It itched, and that was it. I was done. I had a little fever, and that was gone. Same thing with the measles. I mean, it's out there now, and I'm glad that it's making the circles of that Brady Bunch episode. Yeah. This was years ago.
Which they actually took off air, and I think it's coming back on.
Well, now it's back on.
During the COVID era, they actually yanked it.
Well, they shouldn't have, though. I mean, this was the national sentiment. This was a national sitcom. It was a very famous national sitcom back then. I don't know what it would be compared to today because I don't watch TV. But, I mean, it was a national sitcom. And they're talking about the measles and laughing. And, I got 101. Well, I broke the record. I got 101.2. Okay, go upstairs. And they're playing dead. Measles is great. No medicines, no shots. And all we got to do is play games and eat or whatever and just calm down. I mean, they call the husband and, okay, no big deal. It's wonderful. Staying home from school. Ha, ha, ha. And then the maid gets all laughing. I mean, it's just, no one made a big deal about it. Now, let's be realistic. So in 1960, 1 in 500,000 people died from the measles. This is before the vaccine. 1 in 500,000. Now, the vaccine, correct me if I'm wrong, George, this is his wheelhouse, was introduced. The measles vaccine was in 1963. Well, it was still 1 in 500,000 before that. Now you can get about 600 people will die if you look at the numbers, and I think you bring them together. So we've gotten worse since we've entered this shot into our culture. Not to mention that and this is with the flu vaccine. There's studies out there. George, please correct me. I'm just a mouthpiece. I'm not the scientist. But I mean, that you get secondary viruses from some of these things. So you just got to think about that. That's all. When I believe in informed consent, I will never tell someone what to do. Even when I was DA, when I talked about our son being vaccine injured, I've been very open about it. I don't care if you like it or not. You have your opinion. I have mine. Don't listen to me or whatever, or prove me that I'm wrong. But that's our journey. And I'm not going to tell you, but there are studies out there that says, okay, you won't show the symptom of this illness that you're trying to cover up. I don't care about the symptom, but yet you subject yourself to viral infection and you're 4 times more likely to get whatever else infection. So all I'm saying, there's a lot of information out there, Karen, that is being suppressed, and I loathe suppressing information. I truly believe in free speech and even stupid speech. And maybe I'm stupid. Fine, let me stalk and then prove me wrong. or let me fall into my own trap hole that I'm setting myself up for. But everybody deserves. How do you know speech is good? Because you hear bad speech. How do you know bad speech is? Vice versa. So all I'm saying is, and there's studies out there also. I'm going to put this, and I'll let this chemist take over before we have to break, because I want him to talk about this. But there are studies out there, and there's journals out there, and George will tell you the journal. And there's a Dr. Larry Pavlovsky, who really is a true doctor in my opinion. He's an MD. Good. I mean, I've seen a lot of his work, and he really cares, and he's very knowledgeable, and he just educates people on this. And he's been a guest speaker. Doesn't get the attention that all the other fearmongers get. But he's saying that, look, there are numbers and statistics that if you get the measles and the mumps and chickenpox, there's actual percentages in studies, like upwards of 20% lower cardiovascular disease when you get older, anywhere between 30 and 50% lower cancer diagnoses when you get older.
Wow.
I mean, wow. This is out there. This is science that's out there. Now, if you want to contradict it, if you have a new study that comes out, well, why don't we just do robust studying? How about we do robust studies? And that's all that Bobby Kennedy's trying to advocate. If there's going to be a medicine out there, if there's going to be a vaccine out there, if there's going to be medication out there, let's make sure it's safe. That's it. And if you want to take it, have full information, and then you can make a decision. That is what informed consent means. That means you have to be informed, and then you consent after you've received the information. That's my advocacy. My advocacy is true, not partial, not faux, true informed consent, and then people can prayerfully or whatever think out what they want to do for themselves and their family.
Yeah, amen. And yes, there's a couple of years ago, you and I spoke before a bunch of doctors, and we explained sort of the history of vaccines in the United States. And you brought up measles. And this is a hugely inconvenient truth. That is that significant numbers of infectious diseases had pretty much subsided in terms of the disease cycle. They had pretty much subsided before the introduction of the respective vaccines. And that is an issue we must deal with. The measles is no exception. The measles was essentially eradicated by the time the measles vaccine was introduced in 1963. So by 1962, it was a virtual non-entity in terms of disease. And you're right. Really, in the 1950s, 1940s, children would get the measles, parents would welcome it, and they would have basically developed lifelong immunity, which in community terms is called real herd immunity. I just want to be very clear. You do not get herd immunity. And I say this factually on the basis of data. The absence of data, you do not get herd immunity from vaccinations. You don't. That's not what herd immunity is. Herd immunity is actually opposite. It's the naturally acquired wild type of the virus that you then resolve through really the two main mechanisms of the immune system, which are an innate immune system, the cellular response, T cells, and then an antibody side of the immune system, which is a B cell. You need both. The problem with vaccinations, and this is well known, the problem with vaccinations is that the first tier of the body's natural response is bypassed altogether, and it goes straight to antibody production. And what did we all learn in the COVID era about antibodies? What did we all learn? It should be embedded in your brain now.
Say it in 20 seconds.
They wane. Right. They disappear. And this is why you need constant boosters. But if you go through the first tier, you basically embed immune memory, and you basically end up with lifelong immunity.
Well, Karen, we'll continue to talk about this. If you're on the radio, thank you for joining us. And please jump online. We're going to stay for another 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes. We'll talk about this. We'll take your questions, make comments. We'll respond to them if we can. We'll be looking for them. We'll talk about the tariffs. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. Have a blessed weekend, and please share these episodes with someone you think may enjoy them. Have a blessed bye-bye.
The preceding show was paid for by the LaHood Norton Law Group. The views and opinions expressed are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily represent those of WOAI and iHeartMedia.
Okay, you are doing something on your calculator, George. What the heck are you doing?
Well, he's doing numbers. That's what smart people do. They're doing numbers and calculations.
That's why I don't do that. But
he's going to look at the death from measles in 2024.
Okay.
And that's under the Biden administration.
Yes.
That's under this. When people want to use that soundbite that measles have been eradicated.
Yeah.
Well, they were before 1963, essentially. I mean, look, one death is too many. And that child, unfortunately, in Texas that passed away. Look, there's a difference between dying with the measles and dying from the measles. Did we not learn anything from COVID and all the fake numbers and bullshit numbers they had out there? I mean, he's like, you tested positive for COVID. Well, I got a gunshot wound in my head, asshole. I mean, I died from that. But you had COVID, a COVID death. And that's not even a joke anymore. That happened, George. You know that.
Of course.
We had ridiculous reports after ridiculous reports. People falling off ladders.
Yes. And now we know, but they tested positive.
Diagnosed with COVID and they died of COVID. Yeah, I love that. No, that's absolutely right. Nobody dies from the measles. They die from complications that may be exacerbated by the measles, and those complications should be properly treated. And I often say, go back and study after the the hysteria, like this young 6-year-old girl that died. It was a recent one. Remember, it was a lot of fanfare about that.
It made national news. Yeah.
Negative fanfare. Made national news in West Texas to a Mennonite family. I grew up, by the way, in a Mennonite church, so it's interesting to me. They made it sound like it was a religious thing. But in fact, I mean, the Mennonite folks that I come from in the Northeast United States, they have no qualms with vaccinating. So this is not a Mennonite thing. They just brought that up, I think, to kind of further, it's these religious zealots. And so I took issue with that. Setting that aside, this young girl, when it was finally studied, what they found is that she died of a secondary bacterial infection resulting from pneumonia.
Right.
And she was improperly treated. Actually, they delayed antibody treatments. Let's get the vaccine. They delayed antibody. They delayed antibiotic treatments, which they should not.
I had not read this.
And by the way, the parents have 4 other children that were given vitamin A, and I think they were given some albuterol, and they're fine. And for whatever reason, the system guided the treatment or lack thereof in this case, and she paid the price. And at the end of the day, what do they blame? A lack of vaccination. That's dishonest. Nico and Karen and I were chatting, and it's just a question that I have. If you guys are listening, I would appreciate your help. Maybe you can find an answer to this. The World Health Organization in 2024 reported that in the EU, there were 127,350 cases of the measles. And I think...
how many?
120. Yeah, grab onto something. In last year, before Trump was in the White House, the World Health Organization reported 127,350 measles cases in the EU. How many of you guys knew that?
I didn't.
Was it a crisis?
No, I never even heard there
I don't remember
was
the
any
New York
measles.
Times making a big deal out of this. I honestly don't. Please check me out. Did Washington Post make a big deal out of this? I don't remember that. But then again, Trump was in the White House. You don't think there's a connection? Then you're not following along. I think there was something like 38 deaths.
But I thought it was eradicated.
That's about right. That's about right. Another interesting dynamic to me, it seems, is that vaccination rates were increasing until about 2022. Remember, in 2020, something changed. The medical expert class got a big black eye, right?
Yeah.
Legitimately so. These are people that were departing from textbook science because of political inclinations.
Right.
And it cost them. And so you saw every time there was a vaccination push, that pretty much resulted in people getting their kids more and more vaccinated for childhood diseases. And so you saw from about 2000 to about 2020, 2021, you saw a precipitous increase in vaccination rates. That all changed. It all changed. What's interesting to me is that in declining vaccination rates since then, Nico, that's given us an unanticipated sort of laboratory experiment. Because while vaccination rates have also decreased, guess what's also decreased? The number of measles cases. I think that's interesting to me, and that should be studied.
There's a lot of questions
I have
online.
questions about that as an analyst because there's not enough science.
Well, because you're bringing this up now about these diseases like measles waning, and then suddenly there's a vaccine, and so a natural, I guess, people naturally think it's the vaccine that made
because that's
these
what they've been
cases.
told.
Right.
I mean, look, polio is no different. Did if we get into the whole thing about polio,
may I very briefly? This is an important topic that probably deserves its own 30 minutes, but that's a very important statement because that's usually what people bring out of, that's the defense argument. Oh, polio was essentially eradicated. I want people to understand that really prior to the polio vaccine, and you guys might remember that it was Jonas Salk, and I think it was 1954. Prior to 1954, all it took for a doctor to positively diagnose polio was simply that you had some paralysis for the last 24 hours. There was no laboratory evaluation at all. After the vaccine, you started doing laboratory evaluation of polio.
And it became harder to get polio. The bottom, I'm translate for him.
Yeah, I get it.
It became harder to get polio. They moved the goalpost.
All right. So that matters.
Yes, it matters.
So yeah, it's not apples and oranges. When you use a qualitative, just 24, do you have any idea what other conditions could result in a temporary paralysis that have nothing to do with
George,
paralytic poliomyelitis?
People need to know that when you look at what they classify polio as today, it's not that polio has been eradicated.
No, of course not.
It's just it's mischaracterized, categorized now. And so what it takes to diagnose someone with polio is very different. If you keep moving the definitions, you got to compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges. And that's what happened in this game. But get to some of the questions.
So Richard says, will herd immunity protect against variants?
Oh, much more effectively. I mean, it doesn't mean you won't get sick. But much more effectively, it seems the data seems to show us, than any kind of so-called vaccine protection. And the reason, again, is because of the way the immune system works. And this is very complicated, so we can't bury the show in this. But let's keep it simple. Let me recommend a book by Dr. Suzanne Humphreys. Dr. Suzanne, she's a vaccine researcher. She was actually with Joe Rogan in a recent episode, and you guys should pull that up and listen to it. I think she did a fantastic job. But she wrote a book called Dissolving Illusions that I think you guys should all get. Disease, vaccines, and their forgotten history. And it's very ably done. She addresses this issue, actually, that's being brought up in this question. And also get Vaccines, a Reappraisal by Dr. Richard Moskowitz. I like that book a little bit better because he goes a little bit more into the weeds. But it's not hard to read. It's a pretty straightforward book. And he breaks it down and says, look, the way the body is set up in terms of our immune responses is a two-tier deal.
Right.
There's an innate system where, and you might remember this from high school biology or high school, maybe college immunology if you had it, but things like phagocytes and cytokines and even a serum component. This is the initial response. So a disease attacks your body and there's an initial launch of immune responses to that disease. Correct. And that basically is sort of a front line resistance of that disease to keep the disease from coming sort of further into the body and doing greater damage. The second line of defense is not a T cell. That's a T cell mediated response. The second line is a B cell mediated response. This is the one we're all familiar with, where antibodies are actually released against the antigen. What the vaccines do, again, is they miss the first line of defense. That's problematic because the body has a way of doing things. There's a chronological way of doing things. For instance, one of the first things that's produced, Nico, is a fever.
Yeah.
Fevers are absolutely critical. I know they may make you feel miserable, but they're absolutely critical because if you read what we've known now for 100 years at least, is that fevers obviously elevate your body temperature, and that has a very negative effect on the virus's ability to replicate itself. So fevers are a good thing. And this is the whole point of vaccines. It's a shortcut. We don't want you to go through that. Of course, nobody wants to go through that. So it makes it very attractive. And so what they do is they skip over to generating an antibody response. But the body's not being primed. Important mechanisms are not being launched. One of the most important mechanisms, Nico, when we acquire something naturally and we resolve it, is that the body also has a process for purging that antigen out of our system. This is one of the greatest concerns we have right now with mRNA technology for COVID, is because we have legitimate concerns. Data showing in research studies over the last 3 to 4 years that there is no known mechanism for purging the body of that spike protein. And so that now what you have is you've relegated the body to basically autoimmune diseases in perpetuity. You have this spike protein
that your body produces, essentially. You have this constant state of inflammation because the body doesn't have a mechanism for getting rid of it. This is a problem. I used to have a professor who used to say, George, be careful with shortcuts. Because I was like, man, do we really need a 7-step synthesis in the laboratory? He goes, well, hell yeah. There's a reason for that. You produce, you have products, you have certain reactants, you produce certain products and certain byproducts, and those produce other byproducts, and it takes time. He said, be careful with shortcuts, my friend. He used to say, it is a quick way to get where you're not going. And it seems to me that's what we're doing here with vaccines. We don't want people to experience the pain, but we're taking some significant shortcuts.
I want to get some more questions, but you're right. But see, the issue that I have with any medical intervention is the robust testing or lack thereof. That's it. And the fear mongering. That's my issue with it. If we look at phase 4, one time, George, on the show, you went through phase 4 studies, and it was very informative. And I took notes diligently, and I still have them. And it's important to understand what normal medicines, medication, pharmaceuticals go through in phase 4 studies before they hit the market.
Yeah.
And number one, there's preclinical animal tox studies, right? So are they going to kill an animal? And George has educated us before.
Prior to phase 1.
I'm not there yet.
Okay.
Yes. I said before phase 1, preclinical, meaning before. Preclinical, 3 months to 3 years. It takes to just make sure that we're not even going to get into phase 1.
You're not going to kill an animal.
Right, that's preclinical.
Yeah.
Then phase 1, first in man. This is safety oriented. This is the first in man. Okay, phase 1 study, that's usually 2 months to 1 year. Kind of a huge range there. That's just phase 1. Okay, we're past preclinical, 3 to 3 years. We're past phase 1, now phase 2. Safety, that was the first one. Phase 1 was safety and efficacy. So that's phase 2. That's usually a year. Start doing the math here, okay? And then we get into phase 3, pure efficacy. Now we feel comfortable enough that it's safe. Whether the long-term effects, we're going to get there with post-marketing. But it's not going to kill you when you take it. But now let's see if it does what it says it's going to do. Thousands of patients, not 43, thousands of patients, 2 to 4 years. Are you adding this up? I know you're not a math lady, but neither am I, but just do some rough numbers.
It's a lot.
After phase 3, which is pure efficacy, because you went from you have animal tox, pre-clin, then you have first in man, you have safety, phase 2, and efficacy, phase 3, pure efficacy, phase 4, post-marketing. Now, what's the long-term effects of this? It won't kill you on the spot, but what does it do to you in 5 years? That's 1 to 5 years. Do the math. You got 5, 9, 10, 11. You're looking at 14 years, that's on the high side, to get a product to market, a pharmaceutical to market. And
in some cases, they had a phase 5 to do post-marketing surveillance.
But all I'm saying, hold on real quick. So vaccines are not considered pharmaceuticals. That people have got to educate yourself. The reason why is because in the 80s, they said, look, we don't have time to go through all this. They've bamboozled Reagan and all the others back then. This is Reagan on Reagan's watch. So as good as Reagan was, this was one of his blind spots. And so they have this vaccine injury compensation fund from 1986. That when a certain amount of people get injured, because they will be, and I think we've learned that now, there's a fund. And they've paid out close to $5 billion of people that get injured from things that are supposed to be 100% safe. 100% safe, and they've paid out $5 billion. And by the way, we didn't get paid any money, so we didn't go through it. It's a very hard and arduous road to even get paid. Only a very handful of attorneys handle that because you get kicked out in vaccine court right away. So that's $5 billion on a small percentage. And when you look at VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, which is a part of the CDC, not a part of the Amish CDC, the national CDC, then you see that it's a self-reporting system and only 1% report. And we've talked about the numbers there, which are truly alarming. If you apply the 1% that we know for sure, it's 1 to 10% to be fair. But on average, it's 1% self-report. All I'm saying is educate yourself. Why aren't vaccines considered drugs? Because they're considered is it biologics or what? Biologicals. So they're biologics because then it's a different standard to get them to market. And as long as we've been doing this shit, you can't do the studies to make sure everyone shut people like me and other people up. I'll shut up. I'll go back to treating my kid like a pincushion. But until then, until you show me objective data, I'm going to be a mouthpiece for another side of this and a mouthpiece for my son who cannot speak because he's vaccine injured and he can't speak anymore.
And as Patricia says, just with all of that you went through, how many years, how many tests, just think of how many meds were approved and then pulled off the market
Vioxx.
even after.
Vioxx went through this.
Yeah.
And the bean counters knew. Vioxx went through all this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And they still knew it was going to kill people. But you know what those greedy bastards said? They said, man, the number that will pay out in injury versus the number we're going to make from this product, it's going to be a net win to us. They knew they were going to injure people. If you look at pharma, this is a fact, and even CNN reported on this for all the people that want to criticize. Even CNN reported, in 10 to 12 months of the COVID shot regimen, warp speed, which is Trump's blunder that he doesn't talk about anymore because I think he finally woke
You're
up.
right. He doesn't.
But there was this huge screw up, and I blame Trump for this. But in 10 to 12 months, nine new billionaires with a B in the pharmaceutical industry in 10 months. And that's not part of this. That's not part of anywhere in this discussion why you have all this fear. Money drives. So you monetize anything and it ruins it, whether it's church, whether it's hospitals, whether it's healthcare, quote unquote, or disease management care, whichever one you want to call it. If there's no money in healing people, then people need to be sick. I mean, I look at motives for a living. I mean, that's your motive. I mean, no money in healthy people, dietary, nutrition, vitamin A, research, high doses of vitamin A and vitamin D. Look at that and what it does to virals and cytokines. I mean, so there's no money in that shit versus sick people. I'm going to default to sick people. I mean,
so there's a couple of people that are asking about some, whatever they are, vaccines or shots or whatever. And I've even noticed it on the radio, on television. You'll hear commercials targeting people over the age of whatever, 50 or whatever. And those two shots are the shingles shot and the pneumonia shot. And one person that's very far back, I can't remember her name, I think it was Patricia, says her husband just got shingles. It was horrible. Now she's considering getting the shingles vaccine.
Well, did he get the chickenpox vaccine? You have to ask that question too.
Well, explain why.
Because there's side effects to everything. I mean, when you think about that, and when you think of upper respiratory problems, they look at there's data. George probably knows it. You can go to Highwire, look up Dr. Susan Humphreys, look up Dr. Larry Palevsky, Palevsky. I mean, these are people that are experts in this. And George is considered an expert because of his chemistry background and because he worked in laboratories, by the way. He's not just somebody theorizing and pontificating on this. I mean, he actually did the studies himself. I mean, and you look at these secondary viruses. So you may have a vaccine that stops the symptom. Okay, so you don't get you don't get the rash, or you don't get this, or you don't get this one symptom. But then you have to look at the long-term effect. You're robbing from Peter to pay Paul. And on one study that was mentioned on an interview with Dr. Palevsky, he was saying that you're 4 times more likely to get an upper respiratory. And how many problems are we having now with this mystery viruses? But it's okay for mainstream medicine not to know shit. But then yet anyone that has a different opinion and wants you to think, if you don't have exactly the 100% answer, then you're discarded. But yet how many times, and I challenge people, think about all the times that you or your family member have gone to doctors and how many times they said, we think, I'm not sure.
It happens more and more these days.
It always happens.
More and more, right.
It always happens. Forget about the misinformation that they give you out there, that vaccines are safe and effective. Forget about that. But I'm just saying, just think about how many, on non-issues like this, think about how many times they say, well, we think, not sure, we think, let's try this. Okay, well, I don't want to roll dice. I'll go to Vegas for that.
Nico has a truly superhuman ability to cover multiple topics quickly, and so many of them have value. And I always try to, okay, which one of those is most important? And that's usually, okay, which one of those? And they're all important. And you were talking about the chicken pox, and then shingles came up, and I just want to point out to people that the two are related. That shingles is a reactivation of the chickenpox virus. And it's a reactivation of chickenpox virus because it's believed to reside in the immune system, and then it's reactivated by stress or old age or other issues. Yes, that's right. There's questions. Yes, there's questions about diet. Yep. Don't even get us started on that.
Start on that.
So, indeed, that's absolutely right. It can have multiple flare-ups. So go back to the question I was asking. Go back to chickenpox because that's really the issue. It occurs to me that I think the chickenpox vaccine, please check me out on this, was introduced in 1995.
You don't think. He knows. Go ahead. That's a humble way of saying I'm telling you what the truth is. Go ahead.
And my curiosity.
1995.
1995. It was added.
95.
95. It was added to the schedule in 1995. By the way, the childhood vaccination schedule now is pretty robust. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's I think it's about 40 doses by the earliest of ages, early childhood ages, 2 to 5 years, and then some 70 doses by the time you turn 18. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And so you've got, when you have MMR, for instance, I want to get back to chickenpox because it pertains to this. You have MMR, measles, mumps, and rubella. That is a trivalent shot. And so those are 3 doses. And then you have MMR, there's an MMR-V, and that's what varicella is. Varicella is the chickenpox. And so what they're doing, and this is a problem, each one of these doses is meant to induce an immune response on its own. And so what has not been studied is you call it the synergistic effects. What does that mean? Well, together it may either antagonize, it may neutralize, or increase the immune response induced by the others. There's a lot of iterations here that should be studied. And so I wanted to come back to chickenpox before I go down MMR, because we should ask, prior to the vaccine being added to the schedule, I think that there were something like only like 50 to 100 deaths a year in the entire United States prior to the vaccine, which, Nico, I think came out to about 1 in a million people. So what's with the vaccine? I'm just
1 in a million? Wow.
Yeah. So I think the chance of dying was less than 1 in a million.
And did they tie it to the chickenpox, or are you dying with the chickenpox?
Brother, that's a whole
different
yeah,
analysis.
Then you get into questionable diagnostics.
Right.
So I believe this is accurate. Please check me out. Prior to the chickenpox vaccine being introduced into the schedule in 1995, I think there were only about 50 to 100 deaths a year in the entire United States. Okay. So the chance of dying was less than 1 in a million. So I'm asking, what's with the vaccine? Now, I think that having vaccines for viruses is just really shitty science to begin with. In fact, I remember, and I didn't go to school that long. I'm not ancient. I'm 56. That's not ancient. And I remember in high school, when I was studying high school biology, I remember studying that, generally speaking, having vaccines for instance, influenza-like virus or influenza viruses was a bad idea because the mutation rate is so accelerated that you can't possibly keep up. So every time you develop a vaccine, say it's for a different strain, and you're accelerating it to market, you're abbreviating that clinical schedule, and we are not taking inventory of the cost. And this is the problem with groupthink. This is why these two topics made Sidebar today, because there's a groupthink economically with tariffs that are governing the day, and there's a groupthink going on that's governing vaccine science, and it irritates the living shit out of me. In vaccine clinical trials, a lot of times the placebo is simply another vaccine,
right?
Which is unbelievably, breathtakingly moronic.
Why? But explain why.
Because
the non-scientist people, they don't understand that.
Well, shit. I mean, you guys might remember the concept of a genuine placebo, right? Like an inert saline solution. Why is it inert? Because it's non-reactive. Why saline? Because saline is meant to kind of mimic basically the serum concentration of your blood. So it's literally inert. There's nothing there. It creates a kind of white canvas against which the control, the antigen, the vaccine group that's administered a vaccine, if there's any kind of signal, safety signal or otherwise, it'll show up against a white canvas, if you will. When you fill that canvas with basically the same shit, how are you going to see safety signals? And listen to the rationale. Well, it would be unethical to prevent that placebo group from getting the vaccines because vaccines save lives. No dumb shit. That's the whole point of the clinical trial, to determine whether, in fact, this actually makes the situation better or worse.
And then you have to think, and then what about the post-marketing studies? Because you have to think about the long-term effects of this and what it's doing to your immune system, and whether you're not whether you're not prepared to take on other wild viruses, and are you truly susceptible to upper respiratory problems and RSV and COVID and all the other stuff that's out there? I mean, because the best way to combat viruses is diet, supplementation, and exercise. That, I think, you can argue that scientifically, And also factually, when you look at people's lives and people that have not been, filled
I'm
up
trying to
with-
remember the doctor who treated the young girl. And you just reminded me when you talk about that treatment regimen. If please look this up. I think his name was Dr. Edwards. I don't remember Edwards, and I don't remember his first name. Who treated the young girl? That's basically the treatment that he subjected the other children to, and they fared rather well. And that matters. Supplementation. I do think that because he was concerned about the pneumonia factor and the upper respiratory inflammation, I do think that he gave them a short regimen of I think he gave them albuterol, and that really helped them.
But is this the same doctor that misdiagnosed the one that passed away? So it was another one.
No. Yeah,
okay, got it.
Hey,
That
we
is
had
correct.
this question, and we've had it before in the past because people are wondering, how do you get away with not getting your kids vaccinated and then sending them to school?
You just tell them I don't want to vaccinate. That's it. And then they
But
give you. And
they
then they
almost-
give you,
sounds crazy.
and
I
then they
know
give you
that-
a waiver form, and then you sign the waiver form.
And I know that I have heard you give that answer before, but it feels like when you get your kids started in school that there is no choice. It
Well, 'cause
makes you believe
look at the language when they send you the email. They said you need to turn in the mandatory whatever vaccine, whatever.
Right.
But they don't say that there is an exception, conscientious, objection and other things. And I just said we just don't want to vaccinate. Why? Because I said so. That's it. Well, we don't provide the waiver. You have to go to this website, and they give you another step. They don't have the waivers there at the school. They send you to the website, and you get the waiver, and you sign it, and you notarize it. And turn it.
Even right after COVID, a lot of the kids that were going into the medical field, my daughter included, they gave them saying, okay, give us the paperwork that said you got all of the, different vaccines. And she said, sorry, I'm not getting them. Turned it in, no problem. Nobody asks any questions.
If anybody, forget what I say, George is more of an expert on this. I'm just some big mouth with an opinion that looks at other experts and listens to other people. But Dr. Larry Palevsky and Dr. Susan Humphreys that George mentioned, those are excellent. You have to Google them specifically, because if you look up measles, truth about this, you'll get all the other stuff. You won't, or go to Highwire and look up Del Bigtree. You can Google this or DuckDuckIt or whatever you want to do, and go to Highwire. That's the name of the show. It's phenomenal documentaries, phenomenal information on there. And Del, I know Del personally. George has met him as well. And he's been
doing good work.
Been champion on just educating people, and he doesn't even have a vaccine injured child. He was an investigative reporter. He got into this. He was working in California, and I think he was producing the Doctor Show. And then he got Doctors.
We have one comment on Facebook. What's wrong with a shot of tequila, honey, lemon, and Vicks on your chest and socks on your feet? You'll be fine.
And mentolato. As my grandma thought, as we grew up in the South Side, mentolato fixed everything. You know what that is?
No
George?
comment.
No.
That's the Mexican version of Vicks.
That's so good. I don't know. I just think that people they can be afraid and get scared so
it's
easily.
effective, Karen.
I know.
It makes
it
everyone
hurts
think.
me.
You're like,
though.
but look up, zinc and vitamin D and high dosages of A. I have a little something right now. It's a little nasal. I don't know if it's allergies or what. I had 2 weeks of everyone sick in my house, and I feel great, by the way. No, now my deal is I don't sleep.
Yes, I know.
I can go about a week or two with very little sleep, 4 hours a night. And thank God I'm built that way. My wife can't. George can't.
It really is amazing.
But
I don't get a lot of sleep, but compared to him, are you kidding me? I'm a sleeper.
Well, but I had 3 kids. They're coughing on you, and they're sick for a day or two.
Yeah,
that's the blessing, and they get over it. Michael, because he's got a compromised immune system. Kids on the spectrum all have compromised immune systems because they're injured. Their gut lining has been injured, and 80% of your immune system's in your gut. So of course there's going to be, he's not regular. So the kids on the spectrum deal with, so he's he gets sick more than everybody else in the house. But the other ones, they get sick. Literally, thank God, 2 days, sometimes 1 day, at most 3 days. If someone's sick longer than 2 or 3 days, when they get something, it's rare. And, we do colloidal silver, we do vitamins, zinc, D, eat healthy, make blends for them. That's just that God gave us. How did we survive without pharmaceuticals? And doctors, and Dr. Palevsky talks about this in some of his interviews. He says, when I was trained, you listen to the mom, you diagnose, you truly treat the patient and the root cause of the issue. But now they're trained symptom, pharmaceutical, symptom, pharmacology. That's all they're taught these days. And I'm not trying to be mean. I mean, they'll tell you they take no nutrition classes, zero, no supplementation. They'll give you the pyramid. And you ask any doctor, they'll tell you, go look at their itinerary. Maybe an hour or two. There's not a full class on nutrition. It's just not.
Even the food pyramid's messed up.
Well, that's even messed up. Correct. But all I'm saying is we put better shit in our cars than our bodies. And then we wonder why we're sick. And even with COVID, and that came out, this is not open for a discussion anymore.
Yeah.
The people that truly died with COVID or from COVID had on average, is it 4 now or is it more now, George? It was up to 4 comorbidities.
Yeah, that's correct.
So you have 4 other things that could have killed you. Oh, and by the way, COVID was the straw that broke the camel's back. So it matters. It matters if you're healthy. And then, when you suppress information about ivermectin and other stuff that we know now worked, then I just think it's immoral for sure, arguably criminal. I know that people get upset about that because people lost family members. And it makes me pissed. It irritates me. I get passionate about this because in a sense, we've lost Michael. We've lost Michael. Michael was not born that way. There's no history of autism in our family. Now, there's studies, and if you have the MTHFR gene, then you're higher likely on this. I get all that. I'm not saying that one person is not more susceptible than another, and why does this person get affected? That's your genetic makeup, and that those are factors. Those are absolutely factors. And there's other factors too. But why can't you talk about this? And even the people that support vaccines, like the Peter Hossoff or whatever the hell his name is. Hotez, yeah, that prick. I mean, so who Joe Rogan offered $1 million to his greatest charity, to debate Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy, not even a doctor, and he turned it down. So what you don't believe in what you say you believe in, I guess. I mean, I'd go. I've never turned down a debate or discussion or a trial when I have the evidence and the facts on my side and the law. But all that to say, is just we want to advocate informed consent. I forgot where I was going. Sorry. Informed consent. It matters to people because I was talking about Michael. We feel like we lost Michael. We did. He's not the same child as he was when he was a baby at the time that he changed. Things change. I have video. I have pictures. And I'm not going to shut up about it. I don't give a fuck what anybody else says. Michael deserves an advocate, and me and my wife are his advocate. If you disagree, fine. Go shoot up whoever you want to shoot up. I mean, with shots and in medicines. I mean, that's fine. That's your choices. But for us, we've changed. We followed. We listened to the experts. Maya has tremendous skin issues. To this day, she's 16. She hasn't been vaccinated since she was 3, but she still has skin issues. And then the last 2 don't have any vaccines in them. They've never had one ear infection, and they get sick and they get better. Thank God. And we really do our best to build up their immune system. So that's our journey. We've been open about it. I took criticism for it. I really don't care. I'm wired differently because I am a truth scavenger. And if the truth is Michael was not vaccine injured, someone prove it to me and give me the cause, because nobody can give me the cause. He's on the spectrum. We have sleepless nights. That's why I don't sleep, by the way. We have sleepless nights, and we're always going to take care of somebody. And that's fine. That's the journey God has us on. And we're honored and so privileged to be his daddy, and Davi, he'd be his mommy. And he's been our second greatest teacher other than Christ in our home. And we're grateful for him. And our children are different because of him and all of that stuff. And so that's wonderful. But still, we were cheated out of our son in one way, and God is going to use it for another way. And that we believe that wholeheartedly, and we've seen it. But I'm not going to shut up about it. And if you want to do something different, go ahead. But don't shut me up on a discussion that needs to be had. And even the other side will say, well, okay, I'll give you that there's a correlation, not a causation. So you're admitting, even the HOTEFs and all the other people, and even that case law that says that vaccines are unavoidably dangerous, unavoidably unsafe. It's in case. It's actually case law. So in my world, if there's a correlation to a murder, I don't ignore it. We don't say, there's a correlation to a theft or a white collar crime or an aggravated robbery or, God forbid, a murder or a sex.
Yeah, what is it?
There's a correlation to the sexual assault of your child, to this fucker, but we're not going to investigate it. You'd start a riot, rightfully so. There's a correlation and you're not going to investigate?
Yeah.
If there's a correlation, investigate, and then you'll shut me up, and you'll shut George up, and you'll shut Bobby up, and you'll shut everyone up, and even all the vaccine-injured parents with kids. You'll shut us all up because you've got a robust, true, thorough vax versus unvax study, and there's not one, by the way, and you can do it. Then you shut people up.
That's a correct statement.
Right.
That's a correct statement.
Correct me.
And part of the reason is because virtually everybody's vaccinated. Truly. It's hard to find
unvaccinated people.
Yeah, it's and genuinely unvaccinated. I'm talking about people who, because remember that to be unvaccinated means you haven't go through the entire dosage form. So in COVID, if you were vaccinated with the first dose but not the second, you were unvaccinated.
And then that skewed the numbers, Karen.
That was incredible.
Right. So you see the problem, and, and it's
awful.
not just with COVID. That's an approach that's taken, I think, in many other analyses, and it's just a flawed way to look at things. But our theme here is be very careful about being fear-mongered into a medical intervention.
Yes,
that's all we're
just
saying.
Educate yourself.
Be careful with this measles thing. This is completely normal. There's nothing uneventful. It is horrific that young girl lost her life. It is absolutely
from
horrific.
pneumonia, from that bacterial infection.
Yeah, I fear. I think her parents are brokenhearted because I think they sense this could have been at some level avoided. And again, fear is not a good way to live life. It really, really isn't. And I'm stepping back, and I was just curious clinically, because remember last week as we part of the show, I said I got some clinical questions. These are all questions we're asking for which there have been not very good answers from the medical establishment or the research establishment. I want to know why, for instance, the current measles strain in the current measles vaccine, simple question, is a particular strain. There's multiple strains. I think there's something like 24 total measles strains, and I think we've seen like 5 over the last 5-10 years. The current measles strain happens to be strain genome A. But what's circulating out there is B3 and D8. So someone please explain to me. I want to know. Because the only solution that we actually have is something called natural immunity. When somebody resolves the wild type virus, the body keeps a memory of that. And so anything similar, it will attack it. And those genomes aren't entirely different. They're just slightly different. Different enough to evade vaccine protection. Very different. Vaccine protection isn't flexible. It's actually stilted. You are only protected from that particular strain. And so when the circulating strains are dramatically different, entirely different genomes, or substantially different genomes, your vaccine ain't going to help you. Yeah. But the body, in keeping natural memory through T cell and B cell mediated responses, can acclimate and provide better, flexible responses to those new genomes. Here's what I'm worried about, and you heard this during COVID. Same thing with measles, any other disease. What I'm worried about is that you are basically teaching the antigen, the invading body, to avoid it and to create a more resilient strain that you now, as a vaccinated person, are significantly more susceptible to. And have we seen evidence of that? You're damn right we have, but it's 10:37. And maybe at some point
next time
we can talk about that. And
also, look, as we close up, Karen, we also have to address, and no one's doing anything about this. I mean, look, in the 80s, and there's different numbers, but I'm not off. And this is numbers that other people have used. Autism was 1 in 10,000, roughly 1 in 10,000 in the 80s. And you can tie it into the Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund, and when they were given their immunity, I mean, they're absolved from any liability. So anyone that got injured by COVID or any of these other ones, you can't sue them. So what lawyer would be okay with that? What lawyer would be okay with a system of introducing a medical intervention, because it's a medical intervention.
It is.
Where there's not appropriate studies, not robust studies, a lot of injuries, because if you look at VAERS, and that's only 1%, check it up, that's a lot of injuries, way more than Vioxx had, and no accountability, and you can't sue them like you can sue Vioxx.
It's the Harvard Pilgrim Study, 2007, 2010, by Dr. Ross Lazarus.
That's the one that says only 1% votes. I mean, self-reports to VAERS. All I'm saying is, if autism, one of many, we are chronically ill. So when you look, our chronic disease and chronic illness has gone from 12% to 60%. How is that true? And these are rough numbers, but how is that true if we're so healthy with all these medicines out there? I'm not saying there's never a use of medicine ever. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, number one, this is not a medicine. And number two, we're overusing even antibiotics we overuse, and it destroys your gut lining, and your gut lining helps you with your immune system. I mean, so there's a domino effect. And then you have the Epstein-Barr virus and all these other viruses and all these other, and then forget about talking about parasites and what that does in your gut. I'm just saying, God designed our bodies a certain way. I just want to know how we're supposed to treat this manufactured body that a transcendent God designed. That's it. That's my goal. I mean, so I don't have a sacred cow, whether it's science or whether it's a nutrition, whether it's, I want to know how God designed our body and what we need to give it to, number one, to steward it well and to honor God with our health and to live as long as I can, as healthy as I can, and then leave this earth. But my point I was trying to make before I took myself on a tangent, and we'll stop here because we're already at 40 minutes, is autism was 1 in 10,000. And today, Karen, it's 1 in 34.
That's awful,
autism is
awful.
1 in 34. And then I heard some dumb dicks out there when I used to advocate this more when I was in office. Well, we're just recognizing it. Well, first of all, you don't miss autism. The first thing we knew about autism was Rain Man in the 80s. Dustin Hoffman.
1988.
Yeah, that's the first thing. He was an autistic savant. So, and then there's a number of savants out there. But that's it. We didn't know anything about it. And I have campaigned all over this county. 3rd largest county in Texas. It's a huge county. 6th largest city in the country. 6th or 7th largest city in the country. There's not some secret autism village where all the 52-year-old autistic adults are there. Hiding. Where you don't see it. You don't see people on the spectrum our age. Why?
You don't exist.
You don't see stemming. You don't hear. You don't see that at our age. What would you do? Maybe you see 1 in 10,000. You don't see 1 in 34.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying, and if you agree there's a correlation, not a causation, then why aren't we investigating? No one's ever given me an answer to that. That's it. That's the bottom line. Because if this keeps trending up, and 1 in 34 turns into 1 in 20, and 1 in 20 turns into 1 in 10, who the fuck's going to be running this country in a couple of decades? Can someone answer that for me? Where are we going to be? I mean, just use some common sense. So like I said, I am a truth scavenger. I want to look for the truth, whatever it is. I'll conform to the truth, whatever it is, and then I'll champion the truth. And that's my mindset. So thanks for putting up with my rant. It's very personal to me. God bless you guys. What?
I was going to give him a journal based on what you just said. Autism Tsunami, the impact of rising prevalence on the societal cost of autism in the United States. This is peer reviewed. We're at about 225 billion. It's expected to be by 2040 in the trillions. So exactly right. This is an epidemic.
So if it's not, if this is, and why can't this part be part of the discussion? That's all I'm saying. Because we got to figure it out. And nobody's telling, it's like the tariff thing. Well, if Trump's an idiot for doing this, then what's the answer? Do it, but not this way? Okay, well, tell me which way to do it then. And so that's all I'm asking. That's my challenge back to people. God bless you guys. Thanks for joining us. Share this with someone you think may benefit from it. We really appreciate your comments. Try to go back and look at them when we can. And have a wonderful, blessed weekend. Bye-bye.